but it was an 839 acre zone. And at that time, the city was the only participant. The city agreed to participate at 50% of the property tax increment above the base value of 5.6 million. And half of a cent was of the city's 2-cent sales tax was being used as tax revenue attributed to the Imperial Tract. And those contributions were set to begin in 2008. Now, for the amendment, in February 2013, the zone extended the expiration date to 2042, and it also adopted a final project plan. And then in 2008, the county was supposed to begin participating, but this was later amended in 2013, and this restored the county's right to appoint a representative to the 5-member board. And in 2016, there was an amendment to the final project plan to align with the revised development agreement. And it also corrected the sales tax amount that was going to be included in the zone from half a cent instead of the 2 cents. And this was going to be for sales tax generated in the Imperial Historic Area. And in 2013, Fort Bend County agreed to participate in the zone at 50% of the property tax above their base value of 11.7 million. And those contributions were going to begin in 2013. Now, the county's tax increment cannot use parking contribution at the ballpark. And in 2007, the redevelopment agreement outlined the plan for Track 3 and the Imperial site. It gave consent to the creation of the Imperial Redevelopment District, so the IRD for the district. And this outlined other public benefits such as historic preservation, the museum space, and the extension of the University Boulevard Road. And their redevelopment agreement was also amended in 2010, and this was to include 15 acres for the stadium and 6.8 acres of offsite parking. And the city was also going to be purchasing 5 additional acres for on-site parking and providing $7 million to the IRD for the infrastructure and the construction of $3 million in parking facilities. Now, there was a second amendment in 2014, and this was to update the general land plan to replace 127 acres of business park and commercial property to single-family residential. And that third amendment was passed in 2016, and this allowed the IRD to issue debt in order to refund its developers. And it also established that the city would construct the University Boulevard extension and receive a timely reimbursement from the district for its share of the costs. So the city would be receiving a repayment for the ballpark infrastructure and parking. And this amendment also put in the protections for the historic area to achieve the PD vision. Now, for the district to meet the obligations established in the third amendment to the development agreement, a tri-party funding agreement was established between the city, the zone, and the district. And this was approved. So the district would use those TERS funds to implement the zone's project plan by financing and constructing those public improvement projects. And the district would also use those funds to contract with the developers, consultants, and as well to issue TERS revenue bonds once the consent from city council was approved. So to use these funds, the district had to comply with all the terms of the redevelopment agreement, including the reimbursement priority and the TERS revenue restrictions. So the TERS pays 98% of its revenues on a biannual basis. So this is in March and September, and the city and the district keep those funds in separate accounts. So the district can ensure that the revenues spent on the appropriate projects and the 2% of the revenues are retained for administrative costs by the city.
And I'm gonna interrupt. Yeah, can you get rid of whatever that is?
That's your end session.
Okay, okay. All right, keep going.
They're trying to take off the subtitles.
So one question, sorry.
Sanjay?
That 98% and 2%, is it fixed or is it based on how much is expenditure on the administrative?
It's based off of the increment that we receive. So 98% of that.
Okay.
But the 98% is fixed.
Yeah, the percentage.
The percentage is fixed.
Okay, so the final project plan outlines the program and the priority of those public improvements that were approved in 2013. And the zone's project costs were estimated at 148 million. And there was an amendment in 2016 so that the project plan would align with the third amendment of the redevelopment agreement. And you're gonna see that in the next slide. So the amendment also addressed the updated projects, financial sources, the projections of indebtedness, and removed the University Boulevard set-aside account. And it also removed some of the previous funding for the ballpark infrastructure and parking. And this would require the TERS to meet the revenues of the new terms of the redevelopment agreement. So here's, here you can see that there's water, transportation, the University Boulevard extension, and a lot of different projects in the plan, and the total is 199 million. Okay, so for the support services agreement, in 2013, the city and the zone approved this agreement, and this allows the city manager to make expenditures for the zone through the annual budget process. Now, this includes support personnel, services included in general administration, financial services, legal services, and the administration of contracts and projects. And this is work that is completed by staff as well. So for FY25, the amount that was budgeted was 38,000 approximately, and this was for those support services. And the annual budget gets approved every year in September. So the board will recommend that budget to City Council for approval, and it's going to be presented later on in this meeting. So the values that were budgeted for FY25 were revenues at 946,000, and those expenditures were the same. So the beginning balance would be carried over to the ending fund balance of approximately 13,000. Now for the zone's annual report, this is a requirement of Chapter 311 of the Texas Tax Code. So this report includes the annual revenues, expenditures, debt, captured values, and taxes collected. And the board will review that report and make its recommendation to City Council in December for the approval of that report. Once that report is approved, the city will then submit those copies to the Texas State Comptroller and all the taxing entities of the zone. And the calendar generally goes like this. So in March, unless there's business, March and June were canceled this year. And then in September, we go over the budget, annual ethics, orientation, and election of officers. And then in December, you'll receive that annual report and receive a development update as well, and go over all of the new development updates in the zone. And any questions?
I had one question.
Sure, Sunday.
So you showed the list of those projects with 199 million. Are all these already done or some are in the progress?
Some are based off of the timeline. One of the projects that has been completed is the University Boulevard extension, since that road wasn't there before. But a lot of those projects are still on the plan to be completed.
So the money which we contribute, 1.9 million every year, goes into payment of those projects, the expenditure of those projects.
Yeah, so the IRD holds most of that funding, and then once those projects are moving forward, they'll be using the funds from there.
And do we have any debt at this stage, like the money which is already spent but yet to be paid, or it's only as we pay, then they take up the funds?
TERS itself has not issued debt, but we provide that 98% to IRD, and IRD has issued bonds in order to pay for the infrastructure. They issued a bond to pay us back the money that we had fronted from the corporations to do the Stadium Drive and those types of things. So IRD has issued debt, but the TERS, the city has not issued debt. That's not the role per our agreements.
So we have no obligation as such to the bond issued by IRD or accounting of it?
Bonds that were issued to reimburse us is using TERS funding.
Is committed. Suzanne.
Thank you. So I think it's important to understand also the IRD is funded by the residents of Imperial. The funding-
The IRD is what we call a super mud. Because they have more powers than what a standard municipal utility district has. And so they have a tax rate that, the residents pay there for that infrastructure, similar to other master planned communities like Harvest Green or Sienna or whatever, that those have MUDs as well, that those are those tax rates that was used to pay for the infrastructure to develop those master planned communities. It's just that this has other things that have been added to it, and with the TERS related to our priority for historic preservation.
Okay, thank you very much. We will now move to item 6A, consideration of an action on the election of the vice chairman, secretary, and other officers as deemed necessary. And Anna is going to lead us in that effort as well.
So Jim Vonderhaar was appointed as chair, and Suzanne Watley was appointed as vice chairman last year, as well as Chris Barnett appointed as secretary. So it is up to the board to decide who they would like to appoint as vice chair and secretary, and these are for 1-year terms.
I make a motion, we stand as we are.
You have a second?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we'll move on now to item 7A. Receive training related to the Sugarland Code of Ethical Conduct and state laws regulating ethics and reporting responsibilities of city officials. City Attorney Meredith will lead us in this presentation.
Not done this?
You do this every year. State law requires you to do it annually. This is only the conflicts of interest that are required of TERS boards.
Oh, okay.
In October, you get the privilege of being trained not only on the state law, but also the code of ethics that city council has passed.
We do this like 8 times.
Favorite things I'm excited every time I get to do it. I'll step into my happy place here. You're going to your ethics training. So, because this is ethics training, I'm gonna go ahead and put my disclaimer. I don't own these images, Hasbro does. I'm gonna be ethical, you're gonna be ethical. Y'all have done great things over this whole time. I have yet to see Chris or any of y'all violate any ethics laws, and I have high expectations for the next year. So, you're gonna probably ask yourself, it's ethics. What am I supposed to do? What am I required to do? These are the only 2 questions you need to know. What happens if you don't? So, 2 state laws, chapter 171, chapter 176. So chapter 171 is the regulations of conflicts of interest. And you're probably saying, what am I prohibited from doing under chapter 171? You are prohibited from failing to file an affidavit and abstain from voting on items that you have a conflict of interest. And now you're going, okay, next question. What's a conflict of interest? A substantial interest in a business entity would be a conflict of interest. A substantial interest is if you, your spouse, your parent, or your child own 10% or more of voting stock, shares, or fair market value of the business entity, you own $15,000 or more of the fair market value of that business entity, or by chance your paycheck, you receive funds from this business entity exceeding 10% of your gross income for the previous year. So you have substantial interest in real property if you, your spouse, your parents, or your children have an equitable interest or legal ownership with a fair market value of $2,500 or more. It's a very, very low threshold. So if you have a substantial interest, you get to file an affidavit with the city clerk's office, abstain from participation and discussion and vote on the matter. Please note that this affidavit must be filed prior to any discussion. So read your agenda before you walk in the door and go ahead and step outside, because we are home to the Astros. There was rumors years ago, I don't know if I believe them or not, but people have said they can read signs. So just on the outside chance that some of y'all are talented and actually know how to do these signs, I'm going to ask that you step outside so there is no question as to your ethics. So, and if you decide you don't want to comply, guess what? It's Class A misdemeanor. You get to spend time at the county bed and breakfast to fine up to $4,000, confinement in jail for up to 1 year. And if you're having a really bad day and a really cranky judge, you could have both. So chapter 176, This is where you get to brag about gifts that you receive. I call them bragging, gifts, that sort of thing. The state and the county call them bribes. Label them as you will, just know that you get to tell us all about them. You get to file a form reporting certain business relationships and the receipt of certain gifts once they reach a threshold of $100 in a rolling 12-month period. You must file the statement with the city clerk's office no later than 5 p.m. on the 7th business day after the day you become aware of a conflict or you receive the gift. So it's a conflict if it's an item on the agenda. If your neighbor happens to buy you a nice steak dinner, good for you, as long as they don't have an item on the agenda before you, it's not a conflict. So when you have to disclose these relationships, not necessarily your neighbor, but if you are related to the vendor, so somebody who has a contract before this board, within the 3rd degree of blood, 2nd degree by marriage, if you need a chart, I have it on my desk upstairs. I don't have that part memorized. Or if you or a family member received taxable income from that vendor equal or greater than $2,500 in the rolling 12-month period prior to becoming aware that a contract has been considered. So it's the contract is today, you go back 12 months. And then once you file that affidavit, you go forward 12 months. So it's actually a 2-year period. And so when you get to brag about these gifts, when the cumulative value reaches $100, and that includes lodging, transportation, and entertainment. Gifts also include food when the vendor is not present. However, state law and our ethics code lets you go up to $500. So if you have the privilege or misfortune of actually sitting at the table with that vendor where you are close enough to have a conversation, go ahead and order dessert, get an appetizer because you can spend up to $500 in that situation. And if you decide not to comply with that, what's going to happen? It's only a Class C misdemeanor. It still goes on your record, but it's no jail time and the contract could be declared void. So I went through that quickly, but do you all have questions? Chris, do you have any questions? Well, I appreciate your time. We're good for another year. Yes.
Okay, next item 8A. We are going to request that we move this item to the December meeting. So if I could have a motion to do so.
Yeah, I make a motion to move it.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, moving on now to item 9A, consideration of an action on the fiscal year 2025 budget to projections amendment and adoption of the proposed fiscal year 2026 budget. Justin is going to lead us in this one.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Now that Anna's give you a little background on first 3 and Meredith's talked about what we can and can't do, I'm gonna, about everything, talk about some numbers. On the agenda for this afternoon, I'll give you a quick update on the fiscal year 25 incremental tax values, as well as the revenues derived from that. We'll look at the fiscal year 25 year-end projections, and then we'll look at fiscal year 26 incremental taxes and revenues, as well as that proposed budget for fiscal year 26. So looking first, like I said, at fiscal year 25 incremental tax values, we did see some change between the approved value and that value that was still under the ARB review as of certification when we were here this time last year. We see the majority of this 6.1 billion that was under review come up to the approved value. However, not all of it came over. We're only seeing roughly 5.8 million of that picked up on the approved side. We did see exemptions come increase, so the total amount of exempt value rise by 1.6 million. Looking into that, we saw an additional 22 homestead exemptions added to the roll, as well as 10 over 65 and 1 solar. On the county side, it pretty much mirrors the assessed valuations there. We do see some minor differences in the exemption value, and that is because the county's over 65 exemption is higher than the city.
Then,
I'm gonna ask you now, I'm sorry, but you said something about exemptions. Did we have any of the exemptions roll off to where they were increased of the homestead?
Let's see.
Was it balanced?
In terms of net the same homestead exemptions as the next year. I mean, in total, as I mentioned, we had 22 increase in the total, but not sure if it's the same properties that either didn't have a homestead and we have new ones, or what the switch was.
Just curious, thank you.
So with that, on the city side, we're looking at a roughly $2 million decrease in incremental values and almost 3 million on the county side. So we'll
Just to clarify, the majority, if not all of that decrease is a result of these new homestead exemptions.
correct.
Okay,
So roughly about 75–80% of that is on the exemption side, and then the rest of it is just what ended up not being approved through the protest process. Now looking at those values a little deeper, I have it split here between home site or residential and non-home site commercial, between land and the improvements on the land. When we look at the changes from certified last year to our latest supplement number 12, we can see that the residential land rose by 1 million, or about 1%. The non-home site land's up by 5.8 million. I think it's about a 16 or 17% increase. The actual improvements on the residential property is about 4.5 million. However, we do have about $5 million decrease on the commercial improvements themselves that are kind of offsetting that.
Zen?
Thank you. Does that have anything to do with the fact that we bought the property? I mean, there wasn't much anything of tax coming in on that anyway.
On the
No.
land.
Okay.
So what does this mean for us in terms of revenue? Since it's per $100 assessment there, it equates to roughly $8,500 between both the city and county participation there. The projections, taking into account that $8,500 from the incremental tax revenues plus some additional interest income we've seen to date, revenues are looking to be about $3,200 lower than what we budgeted. On the expenditure side, we are seeing some savings on legal services, about $14,000. We are doing a minor adjustment of $4,500 on the admin side, and that's just a variance between what we expected the city administrative services to cost and what actual salaries ended up being there. And then again, as Anna talked about, 98% of those revenues are assigned to the Imperial Redevelopment District, and so we're just revising that down to equal 98% of our revised revenue projected. So with that, we're looking to end the year at roughly $11,000, so $9,800 increase. So with that, I'll move on to 26. No questions on 25. Questions?
Okay.
All right. Fiscal year 26, we did see a pretty significant increase from that supplement number 12 on tax year 24 values to tax year 25 of about 38 million. We do still have about 2.5 million that's under review as of certification. And then we did have a little small increase on the exemption. There going from supplement number 12. This kind of mirrors again between city and county, with just some differences on the exemption side here for over 65. Looking at 40 million on the city side and 38.8 million on county side.
Question, quick.
Yes, sir.
Just again, to clarify, go back. So that 40 million on the city side, that 40 million, that is the increment. So that's what the taxes be charged, and that 98% will go based on that.
Yes.
It's the delta. Okay.
Yes, so here, this 5.6 million, as Anna had mentioned, is the frozen value on the city side.
That's what I thought. Just want to make sure. Okay.
Thanks. So again, kind of looking at what's going on within that tax roll, going from supplement 12 to 2025 certified. On the land side, we saw the residential values come down about 700,000 and roughly about less than a 1% change there. On the commercial value, again, we saw another $8.5 million rise on the commercial land. On the improvements themselves, on the contrary, we've seen the home site improvements come down by 7 million. And on the commercial side, we've seen a rise of 27.7. So this is primarily our commercial piece driving that increase and the change of assessed values. So again, what does this mean for us for incremental tax revenues for fiscal year 26 with the proposed tax rate for our city of Sugar Land at 36,321 and Fort Bend County at 41,200? We're looking at roughly 2.1 million in total incremental taxes. And of course, it's subject to change based on what the final tax rate for both entities are. And then here we're assuming a 99.5% collection rate of that levy. And so addition to that, 2.1 million in incremental property taxes, we have a small estimate for interest income of 1,500. On the expenditure side, 98% of that 2.12 million is flowing to the IRD, with 42 million available to the city to cover administrative costs.
42 million.
42,000. We're in the world of millions, all it is, yes, sir.
That will be great.
And so with that, what we generally plan on the budget side is an even revenue to an expense and allocate the full 100% that's available. So that leaves us again with that $11,000 projected for fiscal year end. So with that, I'll take any additional questions.
Thank you.
All right, so well, to wrap up, we need two actions. The first will be to amend the fiscal year 25 budget to projections, capturing that decline in revenue and a reduction in expenditures. So we'll start with that one.
So,
I'll make a motion.
all right,
So
second,
approve the budget to projection for 25 and approving 26 proposed budget.
we need two separate motions, right?
Oh, you need to separate. So
Yeah,
let's
so
make first,
let's do number one first.
first one to amend the financial year 25 budget to projection.
Have a second? All right, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, now on item two, the proposed FY 26 budget, can I have a motion?
Okay, I'll make the motion for approving financial year 26 proposed budget.
All right, second?
Second.
All right, all in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you all.
Make a motion to adjourn.
I think that is the last thing. So I don't think I need a second on that. Our meeting is adjourned.